We've made plenty of videos about the clones who got the worst of the Clone Wars, those units which saw the bloodiest fighting. But while the Clone Wars consumed the galaxy in a way that hadn't been seen since the formation of the Republic, there were still worlds that made it through the conflict mostly unscathed. Most of these were Republic worlds with clone garrisons, which begs a question, which clone units got off the easiest? In this video, we're going to be answering that question.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
First off, it goes without saying that no clone had an easy time during the Clone Wars. War is war, whether you're on the front lines or not, and it's worth remembering that even the clones furthest from the front were still pretty much slaves. It's bad enough to be treated like a droid because you're the property of a dysfunctional government, even when you're not actively being shot at. But there were still some clones who had it much easier than others, and those are the clones we'll be talking about today. They were the members of the 5th Sector Army, otherwise known as Shadow Hand Command. There were few regions that were entirely untouched by the Clone Wars, but of them, Sector 5 was probably the largest. Shadow Hand Command controlled all Republic forces stationed in the deep core, the innermost region of the galaxy, with the exception of the systems on the Koros trunk line, which were part of Sector 1 instead. The Confederacy of Independent Systems had no presence in Sector 5 whatsoever, and not a single battle was fought within the borders of the region. With one exception near the end of the Clone Wars, the Confederacy didn't even bother entering this part of the deep core. If you watched our video taking a look at the entire Star Wars galaxy, you'd likely already know why that is. The deep core was a largely desolate region. It was packed so densely with stars that it was incredibly difficult for planets to stay stable long enough for ecosystems to develop. The stars there were constantly shifting due to the gravitational effects of the supermassive black hole at the galactic center, which meant that hyperspace routes in the region tended to disappear after just a few years. For most of the Republic's history, only the very edges of the region and a small slice of space along the Koros trunk line had been explored by the Republic. These were considered the civilized parts of the deep core, and as aforementioned, they were part of other sectors. The parts of the deep core that Sector 5 controlled hadn't even been explored until rather recently, less than 1,000 years before the Clone Wars at the very earliest. The Republic had only discovered what would become the strongholds of the 5th Army 20 years before the Battle of Geonosis. The entirety of Sector 5 had very few inhabited worlds, most of which were managed directly by the Republic as government-sponsored scientific colonies. Shadow Hand Command originally made up a full 20th of the Grand Army of the Republic, composing dozens of battalions, all tasked with protecting the inner deep core, or the deeper core if you will. The 5th Army was under the command of Moff Sinzero Gan, whose headquarters was located on Odic 2, a Republic stronghold world located quite deep in the region, closer to the unknown regions than to civilized space. After the first few weeks of fighting, most of the warships and clone battalions assigned to Sector 5 were shipped off to other theaters, but not all of them. Throughout the Clone Wars, Shadow Hand Command was officially designated as a reserve army, and by and large, that designation was accurate. Entire corps from Sector 5 were shipped off to the front lines to reinforce sectors that were having a tougher job, leaving only skeleton forces behind. Many in the Senate and the Jedi Order question why the Republic was even bothering leaving skeleton forces behind, as they weren't needed in the deep core at all. But despite these objections, Shadow Hand Command always maintained several corps in the deep core, as well as a pretty sizable fleet. It would be decades before the galaxy finally discovered why. The battalions that remained in Sector 5 didn't have any fighting to do. Most of those men spent plenty of time chilling in their barracks, screwing around with their brothers and watching holovids. They did have work to do, however. Early in the war, the Office of the Supreme Chancellor had declared Sector 5 a no-go zone for civilians, meaning the clones of Shadow Hand Command probably had to deal with plenty of smugglers and wayward travelers in violation of travel orders. The 5th Sector clones were in place to guard the deep core not just against separatists, but all unwanted observers. Unbeknownst to all but a few, there were a number of massive projects happening in the deep core during the Clone Wars, all on the orders of Palpatine himself. The Republic didn't send its armies to the deep core to sit on their thumbs all day. Secretly, those clones were to build the throne of the Empire. The parts of the deep core the outside galaxy knew about were largely just extensions of the core world, small pockets of unremarkable colonies and the homeworlds of a few species, like the Basilisks and Kosians. But the Republic's interest was largely in the worlds along a route that would later be called the Bis Run. This route wrapped west around Galactic Center, leading from the Empress Teta system far out into the unknown, ultimately ending with the Besquek system. The Bis Run was based on an ancient, little-known route that led from Empress Teta to Prakith, a volcanic planet where, in ancient times, the Sith Lord Darth Andadu had built a fortress. Around 44 BBY, Republic Hyperspace Scouts extended this route to Odic II, where Shadowhand Command was headquartered, and from there, the route secretly went on to Bis. Prakith, Odic, and Bis were envisioned by Palpatine as the future strongholds of his empire, and during the Clone Wars, Shadowhand Command did the dirty work of making the Supreme Chancellor's vision a reality. Prakith was already vaguely known to some in the Republic, and official Republic troops were only present on the world as a rear guard for Coruscant and Sector 1. But unofficially, they had another task as well. The Supreme Chancellor ordered them to covertly search the ruins of Andedu's keep and to survey the world for locations to build a new stronghold. These survey teams evidently found a suitable location as, after the end of the Clone Wars, Prakith became the headquarters of the Imperial Inquisitorius. Odic II, the Shadowhand Command headquarters, was officially the furthest the Republic had gone into the deep core. It was exclusively a government world, home to only Republic military bases and prison camps. During the Clone Wars, the GAR built detention wards on Odic II for political prisoners, which would essentially become the gulags of the Empire in later years. Their use began under the Republic, unbeknownst to all but a few, and when Palpatine needed political threats in the Senate eliminated, it was to Odic II that he sent them. Beyond the Odic system, the Bis Run was extremely unstable, and the Republic Navy ended up lining the route with S-thread boosters, appallingly expensive pieces of equipment that kept hyperspace routes open through brute gravitational force. The world at the end of the run was kept secret from all but a few in both the Republic and the Empire. Its name was Bis, the secret throne world of soon-to-be Emperor Palpatine. While Coruscant, renamed Imperial Center, was the official capital of the Galactic Empire, Bis was the de facto Imperial capital, and during the Clone Wars, thousands labored in absolute secrecy to prepare it for that role. A former stronghold of the Infinite Empire of the Rakata, Bis was already soaked in the dark side when Palpatine discovered it. His influence corrupted the planet even further. To a casual observer, Bis appeared to be an idyllic world with few predators and plenty of natural beauty, but even those who couldn't feel the Force could tell something was just a bit off about the planet. Palpatine made Bis into the dark center of the galaxy, home to his Imperial Citadel and reserves of clone bodies for his spirit to use as vessels. This work began during the Clone Wars under the oversight of Shadowhand Command. It took over 30 years for the truth of what the Republic had been doing in the deep core to get out. After the Battle of Endor, Imperial forces rallied in what had once been Shadowhand Command, answering the call of their Emperor who had been reborn on Bis. After 5 years of preparation, the forces Palpatine had assembled at Bis were unleashed upon the New Republic in a campaign called Operation Shadowhand, nearly succeeding in destroying the fledgling government. None of the clones in Shadowhand Command knew any of this, of course. All they knew was that they had orders to protect the fortress the Supreme Chancellor wanted built, and they didn't question that. They probably believed the work on Bis to be part of some sort of rearguard operation, as the battalions on Prakith were supposed to be. These theories were reinforced near the end of the Clone Wars when General Grievous used a series of deep core routes, the Bis Run among them, to circumvent Republic defenses and attack Coruscant on the orders of Darth Sidious. So that's the story of Shadowhand Command, the clone unit that got the best of the Clone Wars. But what do you think? Would you like to hear about other sector armies in the future? Let us know down below and which sector army you'd like to hear about. And just before you run off, guys, if you're interested in history, make sure you check out our new channel called The Braved, where we go into all different eras and find some of the most badass men and women who were insane with some of their antics. So if that interests you, it's the first link in the description below. And if you just want to listen to some music, check out our Relax Jack music channel, where you can listen to the music we used in this video and plenty of our recent videos and use it in some of your own creative projects. And if you want access to a behind the scenes Discord server with myself and my team, do consider donating to Patreon. And if you just want to join our wider community, check us out on our main Geetsly's Discord and our Geetsly's gaming network. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.